Good morning and welcome to this week's Football Digest Extra Time. I'm Ned Keating, video journalist at The Mirror, and I'm joined this week by the Liverpool Echo's Paul Gorst to run the rule over Liverpool's win at Arsenal on Saturday. There were capital gains for Jurgen Klopp's men as they boosted their top four hopes with an emphatic win, while Mikel Arteta was left to apologise to Gunners fans after such a sorry display. Paul, as a Liverpool reporter for the Echo, you're obviously going to be delighted with the win and the performance as well, and every right to be. But in terms of Arsenal, we'll start off just a little bit on them. I mean, a really disappointing display from Arsenal, particularly for the fans. So tepid, so defensive. In a way, something that Arsenal isn't expected to be almost. Were you surprised by how defensive they were at the weekend?
Yes and no. I wasn't particularly surprised by how defensive they were. It was more just how poor they were in implementing any sort of counter-attacking game plan. I think that 3 times... Arsenal played Liverpool away from Anfield at the Emirates under Arteta, at the Emirates last season, at the Emirates on Saturday, and the Community Shield. He's set them up to counter attack, and he's tried to make them a bit stubborn and a bit rigid and hard to beat. And in July, they kind of profited from that. A couple of Liverpool mistakes defensively. I think Van Dijk and Alisson both had a couple of shockers in that one, and Arsenal won 2-1. And then in the Community Shield, it was a similar thing, playing on the counter-attack. Once again, kind of setting them up to get men behind the ball and use Aubameyang against, I think it was Nico Williams that day at Wembley. And that worked again. They eventually got to penalties and won it. And I think maybe he thought he could try it again and there'd be some joy with Lacazette and Aubameyang on the counter-attack. But Liverpool just didn't have any of it this time. And were worthy winners, but it's jarring really, not watching Arsenal every week to some of the things you associate with Arsenal generally. It's jarring to see an Arsenal team so kind of without any sort of ambition, particularly at home. I know he's kind of tried to bring in a little bit of a culture change and make them a little bit more robust and stronger, but on Saturday they were poor. I mean that could have been a team in the relegation zone for how little they offered.
Despite Arsenal sitting back so deep and being defensive, as we touched on there, Liverpool were able to get in and score 3 goals. Diogo Jota getting 2 of them, started on the bench. We know he's had spells out of injuries this season, but he's really, really starting to look like someone who could be a key man, not just for Liverpool this year, but for many, many years to come.
Yeah, he's a top player. I mean, I initially thought Liverpool had overpaid a little bit when they brought him in from Wolves. I thought because of the way the deal had been negotiated, I thought Liverpool were probably paying a little bit more of a premium to get him when they got him in September. And I always thought he was a good player, but he's just been absolutely fantastic. I think he scored 12 goals now, and that's after having 3 months out with a knee injury as well. So a man in red hot form, got the winner against Wolves. He obviously turned the game in Liverpool's favour on Saturday, and he scored 3 for Portugal in the break. So he's having a fantastic season, and it's a shame really that you look at that absence where he picked up the injury in what was a Champions League dead rubber in December, and he only came back a few weeks ago, and where Liverpool could be had he stayed fit. I mean, when the kind of inquests of this Liverpool season begin, a lot is going to focus on obviously Van Dijk and Joe Gomez and Joe Matip, who's in and out of the team, the season-ending injuries. But I think a lot has got to be focused on Jota now as well with his absence. And for me, he's got to start now for as much as he can ahead of Firmino and in that front three, because he's just got a knack of scoring goals. And as I say, now to a dozen for the season, and he's going to be targeting 15 plus now for the rest of the season. He's been a fantastic buy.
I saw as well that you'd spoken recently to his former manager in Portugal, Vasco Seabra, with Paços de Ferreira. Probably pronounced that completely wrong, but you've obviously you spoke to him and you kind of got an understanding of what it was like to work with a young Jota, and it kind of seemed like a really interesting interview that you had with him. Just talk us through that and what he kind of how he helped you probably gain a better understanding of Jota when he was younger back in Portugal.
Yeah, it was very interesting talking to Vasco last week. He spoke about how when Diogo Jota came to Paços Ferreira at 16 or 17, he didn't really know what type of player he was. He was just a young, fairly unassuming boy, and you know, he could play, but he was neat and tidy, and he knew that he was a player, but it was kind of where do we play him, where can we fit him in, and there was a conversation between the pair that took him from being a kind of neat and tidy central midfielder to a forward who, you know, a mobile forward, and that was almost the catalyst in the change in his career early on, and all of a sudden he was a goal scorer. And then from there, everyone at that club knew that this was a player who was destined for bigger things, so they tied him to a lengthy contract. And then Atletico Madrid came in, and they'd been watching him, and he was only there 2 months, didn't quite fit in there, but it was almost Vasco said that it was a move that was probably too big too soon, going from, you know, a lower side in Portugal to one of the big ones in Spain. But from there he went to Porto and worked under Nuno, and he's really flourished ever since. And now we're looking at one of the rising stars of the Premier League. He's been superb.
There had been talk as well over the international break about, you know, and recently too, about Mo Salah potentially fluttering his eyelids towards clubs in Spain, shall we say. We know at the minute that he's obviously going to be a Liverpool player until the end of the season. Who knows what's going to happen in the summer? You know, talk of Erling Haaland. Who knows the money that clubs will have to spend as well? You know, with the current world that we're living in. But if and when the time does eventually come for Mohamed Salah to move on from Liverpool, did I have the ready-made replacement in Diogo Jota already in the squad?
I'm not sure about that, actually. I think Jota was brought in to kind of supplement that front three. For so long, they have been pretty much run themselves into the ground for Liverpool over the last 3 years, haven't they? And barely missed a game, other than Divock Origi coming in now and again, and Xherdan Shaqiri. And I think Liverpool needed someone whose quality was not too much of a drop-off when any of those front three were out. And I think Jota was the perfect man for that. And now he's got himself into a situation where you're questioning whether he should be dislodging in one of the front three. But in terms of Salah, the timing of that interview last week with Marco was peculiar and probably ill-advised, you know, with the Champions League game coming up tomorrow night. But I don't think, if you actually look at what he said, I don't think he said anything too inflammatory or too controversial. It's just kind of straight back at the questions about Real Madrid, and much of the conversation was about the players and the team and Zidane, and it wasn't. I think there was just one little question about would he like to play in Spain one day, and he obviously he just said perhaps one day, who knows. But for my money, from what I read, with the interview with AS in December, and then he spoke to another publication in Norway, I think in January or February. He doesn't speak too often, Mo Salah. He's very well protected by the club in that sense, and his agent is very selective over who he speaks to. So when he does, you kind of have to listen and read and see what he's saying. But I don't think he said anything too controversial, and I get the feeling, speaking to one or two people and reading between the lines and so on, it's more that a new contract is what he's perhaps after at Liverpool. So maybe that is something that the club will look at further down the line.
Of course. Looking at Liverpool's display in general, you know, a really good display from them away from home. 3 goals, a clean sheet, really dominated. You know, it was almost an attack against defence, wasn't it, on Saturday? And they're starting to look like their old selves again at a crucial stage in the season. Back-to-back wins in the Premier League. I think it's just 2 points, isn't it, off what is a very clustered top 4 race at the minute. But obviously the big Champions League game to come against Real Madrid as well this week. But they look like they're starting to get back to their old selves at possibly the best time that they could do it. Yeah,
looking like a team again, once again. And I think the big situation has been moving Fabinho back into that midfield and getting a couple of centre-backs who are centre-backs by trade and crucially being afforded the chance to play together and kind of develop a bit of a partnership. I mean, Liverpool have played 20 different centre-back partnerships this season, and you know that has had such a destabilising impact on Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example. You know, plenty of talk about him not being at his best, particularly from Gareth Southgate. But how can you be at your marauding PFA Young Player of the Year best when you've got 20 different centre-back partnerships lined up alongside you? And that has had a kind of debilitating impact on the midfield as well, because Fabinho's been forced to move back and Jordan Henderson's even played in there. So the big thing for me has been just getting 2 centre-backs in there. Excuse me. No, not particularly spectacular centre-backs by any chalk. Ozan Kabak was only 21 last week, and Nat Phillips has played the majority of his career out on loan. But crucially, they are two defenders who want to defend first and foremost, and having Fabinho a little bit further in front of them as that shield, Liverpool just look a completely different team. And not sure whether they can win the Champions League with those two at the back, but 3 clean sheets on the bounce, and they're looking as sturdy as they have been all season, really.
You mentioned there about Trent Alexander-Arnold having struggles this season. I just wanted to get your kind of thoughts on the whole situation about him being dropped from the England squad, Jurgen Klopp's comments as well before the game against Arsenal, and after it as well, saying that he was delighted, obviously clarifying that he wasn't trying to have an argument with Gareth about it. But for you, is he still England's best right-back option, and is he someone that needs to start playing well over the course of, between now and the end of the season to get in the squad, or should he be in the squad automatically?
I find it baffling, really, that he's not. He's 22. He'll be 23 in October. He's won the Premier League, the Champions League. He's the PFA Young Player of the Year. He's been part of the best defence for the last 2 full Premier League seasons. 12 assists and then 13 assists, breaking his own record. And he can't get in the England squad. I find that incredible. I know England have got a lot of strength and depth at right back, but this is a player who, as I say, he'll be 23 in October, and he's only had 12 caps. And when you think of how quickly young players get thrust into the England squad these days, he should be someone for me who finishes his England career with 100 caps. No question, he's that good. He's the best player out of the Liverpool Academy since Steven Gerrard in the mid-90s. He's an unbelievable player for me. I've watched him pretty much since he burst into the team 3 or 4 years ago. So I find it strange that he's left out. I don't think he's been at his best, but as I say, there are some mitigating circumstances for that. But I think he'll accept that himself, that he hasn't been at his absolute best. But I don't think he's been anywhere near as poor as what some people like to make out. I think sometimes because of how good he is going forward, his defensive shortcomings are kind of exaggerated almost. I think people think if you're not a right back who's throwing in aggressive slide tackles to concede throw-ins, that you can't defend, and his way of defending and Liverpool's way of defending is very different. It's very much win it back higher up the pitch. You know, you don't have to sprint back 60, 70 yards when you've lost the ball. You win it back up the pitch, save yourself that run. And that is how Liverpool try to defend. So for me, it's a strange one. He should be in the England squad, and he should be starting.
No, I'm with you there. I think it's almost laughable when you consider that he made his debut back in 2018. As you said, they've been part of such a key side. Only got 12 caps, and Reece James made his debut, last October, I think it was, and he's already got 6. But that's a story for another day. I think just going back to Arsenal briefly, Paul. Again, we touched on it at the start, how defensive they were and how poor they were at the weekend. Do you think they would have been that defensive if fans had been in the ground on Saturday? Do you think they would have allowed it as well to happen? You know, they probably would have been very vocal early on, letting the team know exactly what they felt of such a, should we say, boring display almost? It just wanted to contain Liverpool, as you said earlier.
Yeah, it was very, very passive, wasn't it? And they were set up to do that, but they didn't implement it well at all. And you do have a point about the fans here. You can imagine Arsenal fans who have been accustomed to a certain way of playing for so many years, rightly or wrongly. They surely wouldn't have accepted that at the Emirates on Saturday. I mean, Arteta almost got away with that, didn't he? Can you imagine how angry the stands would have been if they were playing with 11 men behind the ball and not even looking at a threat in any sort of counter-attacking opportunities. It was just a real dominant performance from the visitors, and no matter who the visitors are, I mean, Arsenal fans surely wouldn't accept that. I can't speak for them. I mean, I only know a couple, but I think when you're a club the size of Arsenal, you can't put in too many performances like they did on Saturday. You can lose, of course you can, but it was the manner of the defeat, wasn't it? This was a Liverpool team who haven't been anywhere near their best of last season, and was still allowed to roll up and play their way, and were dominant from start to finish.
We've had a few comments in on the show as well, mostly Arsenal this morning. We have had one interesting one from Watira Philip suggesting that the time is already up for Mikel Arteta and that Arsenal should perhaps look at Eddie Howe maybe, or at least let Arsene Wenger come back so that they can finish in the top 4 this year. Paul, as someone from the outside looking in at Arsenal, do you think Mikel Arteta is A, doing a good job, and B, deserves more time if he is under pressure at the minute? Obviously, the defeat at the weekend will have likely increased any pressure on him.
So when did he come on? Was it midway through last season?
Yeah, December 2019, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So you're coming up to close enough to 18 months now, and at that point you'd kind of want to see something. See where he wants to go, where he's looking to get his team, and looking at them on Saturday, you think this was a manager who'd only just come in and just wanted to get men behind the ball against a tough opponent in Liverpool. Don't really see where they're going, and I look back to just before around Christmas time, was it? They were in a really difficult spell, and then they turned up against Chelsea, put on a real performance. Was it Boxing Day? And then from there, it looked like he'd almost found the feet a little bit. But on Saturday, it was as bad as I've seen them. Obviously, don't watch them every week, but if there's been a worse performance than that this season, then it will have had to have done well. Possibly, maybe when they lost to Burnley at home. But yeah, I mean, coming up to 18 months, I think Arsenal fans might be within their rights to kind of question where the progression is going with Mikel Arteta. And obviously, a little bit similar to Liverpool in the situation that they're not. They've been massively hamstrung by the finances with the pandemic situation, but I think they need quite a lot of work in the transfer market, and is Arteta the manager to do that? I'm not too sure.
Big week for both teams, though, for both Liverpool and Arsenal coming up. Big European fixtures. Liverpool in action against Real Madrid in the first leg of their quarter-final. Arsenal have got Slavia Prague in the Europa League. For both teams, a win in Europe and winning the trophies of the respective competitions, they go a long way to saving their season almost, for want of a better term, isn't it?
Yeah, no question. And I think Arsenal, obviously, we've spoken at length there about their situation and their problems. But if I was Arsenal, if I was Mikel Arteta or an Arsenal fan, I'd be looking at this Europa League and thinking, why can't we win it? There's no team to really strike fear into the heart of anyone. I mean, I think Manchester United are favourites, and we know that Arsenal have beaten them this season and drawn with them. And Slavia Prague, while they did well against Rangers, didn't they? But I don't think Arsenal will be too worried about them. So they could be looking at that now and thinking this is a real chance to put a marker down and really stake their claim for the Europa League. We know they were in the final a couple of years ago, weren't they, against Chelsea, and deservedly beaten that night. But why can't they win that Europa League? That's how I'm looking at it from the outside. From the perspective, I mean, I wouldn't say winning the Champions League kind of saves the full season, because any year you win the European Cup is an incredible year. A fantastic season, and this is a Real Madrid team that isn't one of the classic Real Madrid teams. Is it from I think did they win 3 or 4 European Cups in 3 and 4 years, wasn't it? Around the mid part of the last decade, and it's not the same squad. You've lost Ronaldo, Bale. Obviously, Sergio Ramos is injured for this game. So if Liverpool can get by Real Madrid, I think they might have a bit of a point to prove, actually. Then you're into the last 4, and it's going to be either Chelsea or Porto. And I think Liverpool would fancy it against either of those two, and then potentially a final. So while I don't make Liverpool favourites purely because of the issues at centre-back, and I don't think Phillips and Kabak, for all the improvements of late, I don't think they're a centre-back pair who can win you the Champions League or you can hang your hat on. But at the moment, they're just coming into a little bit of form, and I think that they might be able to do something against Real Madrid over these 2 legs.
Liverpool in Istanbul in a Champions League final potentially as well to look forward to later in the year. I'm sure most Reds fans would love that as well. Just to reminisce about 16 years ago. I know my dad would as well. He's a big Liverpool fan. He's got Steven Gerrard, like a mosaic of it on the wall. So every time I go home, I get to see that. He's got like a big light on it. But anyway, enough about my family life. Just going back to Premier League briefly, Paul. Looking at that top 4 race. We touched on it before the show, how tight it is. 2 points, Liverpool are off now, but they're in 6th. You look down the table, you've got Everton and West Ham both playing tonight. They can win and really, really close it up. It's going to be it's going to go right down to the wire, really. There's no other way to say it, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that there's that many teams fighting for it, that there's a lot of mileage still yet to run in this, and I'd still make Chelsea favourites. Obviously, had a difficult weekend with West Brom, somehow going in and scoring 5. Obviously, they had the man less, but I mean, I'd still make Chelsea favourites, but Liverpool somehow found themselves right back in the thick of it when you think that it was only a month ago that they lost to Fulham. The 6th defeat in a row at Anfield, which is incredible, really, when you think about it. Liverpool have lost 18 points from the last 18 available at Anfield and still find themselves 2 points off the top 4. It just shows you how crazy that this season is, and if it was a straight shootout between Liverpool and Chelsea, then I think that Liverpool could really breathe heavily down Chelsea's necks and force an error at some point. But it's the fact that as you say there, you've got Tottenham, West Ham, Everton, and Chelsea and Liverpool all going for that top 4 spot. So it's going to be it's good. I mean, it keeps it interesting, doesn't it, for the last 6 weeks or so of the season for the neutral. We know that the title is being wrapped up for some time. So once again, it's down to the top 4 race to keep people interested.
Indeed. Hopefully an entertaining end to the season. Paul, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your time and for speaking about Liverpool and for Arsenal. Hopefully we can get you on again before the end of the season. Thanks again to guys for watching and listening in. We'll be back on Thursday with our football writers going through some of the bigger talking points from the week that's been in football. And all that's left for me to say is thanks for listening again, and make sure that you tune in next time. Thanks.